Hey, welcome back to this week's story. We are going to again tell the journeys, tell the life. How are we crafting and writing our narratives? I love this so much because I get to first hear the stories and then we get to actually draw all of the conclusions and then we can come alongside and we can help. And so, Rob, first of all, thank you. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for being willing to be
Thank you.
authentic and share your story with us. I
Thank you.
understand you're in a wonderful Florida and you've got the sun shining. And currently in northern Michigan, we've got a blizzard. So if we're going to get 10 inches or 15,
Okay.
so while we're recording this, we've got that. You got that. Hey, this is where we're at.
Yes. I'm 21 months down here, so yes, I've been through many of those blizzards up in the Great
Right.
Midwest. So
All right, so let's jump in. We always begin this way, and I love this aspect. So, we meet in an elevator just for our people listening. You got 30 seconds. Who is Rob?
yes, I am Rob Fenstermaker, and I will empower you to break down those walls of that castle you built up that are holding you back from taking that perfect step of actions you need to. We'll build that bridge so you can step into your kingdom and start living that life of significance.
Wow, that sounded practiced. That sounded good. But who are you as far as an individual? Where's your identity? Where do you find yourself? Are you,
Well,
what are the other things that you would identify as?
what I identify as is, I'm a child of God. I'm a man of principle. I'm a man of character. I'm a husband to my wife and father to my children. I'm friends to my friends. So
Mm,
I know what's important in my life, and those relationships that I have are what's valuable. The relationship
mm.
I have with God, the relationship I have with my wife, the relationship I have with my children. My youngest just turned 27 today, and
Yeah,
so
I
that's a,
actually,
a, a reason to celebrate with
when
me.
I was kind of looking at the backgrounds and looking at some of the things that I'm sure we're going to probably talk about, that was one of the the longest posts that I've seen on your feed was the fact of celebrating the fact that your son was turning 27. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I don't know if it'll come up or not, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and his story is really intertwined in my story. Actually, both my children's stories
Mm.
are intertwined in the story of where I'm at now and how I've got here. And it's very integral. The things that have happened in their lives. It's very integral in what's gotten me to this point. And
So let's
I
get
would love to
started
share a
with
little
it
bit
then.
more about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's jump in, and I mean, obviously, we always start with kind of the beginning, the growing up times, and sometimes we kind of skip over that pretty quickly. But what were the significant events or the circumstances that you felt you kind of gathered or gleaned, or maybe somebody told you, hey, this is how you're going to live your life? What was that life like growing up, or starting right before you actually established adulthood?
Growing up, I guess I was all boy, and I had those certain, growing up in the 70s, you're all boy. And I was kind of more focused on boy things. I wanted to be a football player. I wanted to play in the NFL. That was my dream growing up. And, unfortunately, I didn't have the size, didn't have the speed, didn't have the strength to get past high school football. But as far as growing up, I don't know that I really had a perspective of what I wanted to be when I grew up, that real solid identity. It was just more just trying to go through the motions of life.
Mm.
And it just kind of led me down some areas in life that maybe I didn't make the wisest decisions. Or not, no, maybe I didn't make the wisest decisions, make the wisest friend choices.
Right.
And but you learn, you live and learn. And some of those things have served me well, learning those hard lessons, learning those things that definitely got me in trouble a lot of times. um and but through it all, uh, I was able to persevere. I was able to get past that and start figuring things out as I got into my adulthood. Now, do I wish that things had happened a little bit earlier for me? Yeah, but you know what? It is what it is, and we all have that life story of how we got there. And
Yeah.
I love the when people say, "Well, if I could only go back to age 16 and know what I know now, I would do everything." No, you wouldn't. You make the same stupid mistakes, but in a different way.
Right.
So there's no going back. You just gotta. I can't change the past, but all I can do is learn from the past, and I think that's what's empowering. And I've learned a lot from my past, and just as far as different things that I've had to go through, different struggles, different revelations that have come through me as I went. from, child to teenager to young adult into adulthood into a married man.
So what are some of those things that stand out as transitions, or some of the beliefs or the narrative that you were crafting back then, that you felt like, hey, I'm going to be this way the rest of my life, and then you learn the lesson. You obviously we change, we adapt, we learn from failures, we learn from falling down and getting hurt. What were some of those things?
As far as some of those things, it's creating some of those wrong identities. Um, and that was a struggle I had growing up because maybe I wasn't the most popular kid in school. I definitely wasn't. Maybe I was a bit of a punk. That probably was. And so you kind of get labeled as that by teachers, whoever, that you're just a troublemaker.
Yeah,
And you kind of carry that with you somewhat as a badge of honor. When you're 16, 17 years old and you're being told those things, you accept it, and you kind of carry it as that badge of honor, not realizing that this is probably not going to serve me well as I get older, and try and get some stuff figured out. But some of the identity um, that kind of really impacted me in a bad way was times of loneliness. And that's something that, growing up, there were some times that I had of loneliness that really kind of directed my thinking in a way that was not positive. But I can understand the what that lonely feeling is.
yeah.
I went to one of the biggest universities in the country, and it was huge, and there was so much stuff to do, but it was also one of the most loneliest places to be as I was, walking across that campus. And it can be tough. And just as that was something I really, as I kind of, came out of my late teens into my early 20s, that I really had to deal with, as far as just trying to take that step and just kind of create an identity of being positive and who I really wanted to be.
So in that loneliness, and we've talked about this on some other stories, but in that loneliness, how did that impact your confidence? How did that impact your, what we would term the self-worth? How did it impact your actions and your thoughts? I mean, obviously there's a deep feeling of, hey, I want to be connected. I want to be a part of something. And when you feel alone, you're not connected. So how did all of those things impact you?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the way it impacted me, the idea of I was connecting with the wrong people. I was connecting, trying to find a connection that way through people that maybe they accepted me, or maybe we're just a little different, but we were kind of going down the wrong path, it's just through getting involved in drugs, getting involved in probably too much drinking, that type of stuff. And it just kind of exacerbated the situation. Not that it just exacerbated the situation of, realizing that this was not relationships that were serving me well, that were serving me in a positive way.
Yeah. So when was the, and we'll kind of transition into when was the wake up call? Like when was the, some people call it the 2x4 to the noggin, like when was the bend in the road?
Yeah.
Like where was that at? Because on that path, so many individuals are unable to break free. They get in that peer group, they get in that influence, and they just continue on down that path. And frankly, we see it all the time where people just are unable to break out of that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was a big breakthrough for me is just finally coming to terms with some family history that had never been talked about, that had never been discussed. My grandfather um, died when I was 4 years old on one side of the family. Died when I was 4 years old. It wasn't until I was 25 that I realized that he took his life.
Mm,
He took his life by his own hands because nobody talked about it. Nobody would discuss that. It was just one of those things, and come to realize that there was a long history on that side of the family of men taking their lives.
hmm,
And so it kind of woke me up that, wait a minute, wait. There's this kind of family history going down here. I'm a man, and all these other men, took their lives at the prime of their life. I can't let this happen to me. I've got to come to a realization of who I want to be, who and whose I want to be.
mm.
Um, so it really kind of took me down that road of really trying to discover the solid foundation for my life. What that foundation I wanted to my life to rest upon. And I began to understand that when that's solid, I'm making the right choices, I'm making the right decisions. And when there was no foundation at all, I wasn't making the right decisions. I wasn't making the right choices. I was just doing it, what I call just flying by the seat of your pants lifestyle. And to a certain level, I'm still kind of that way, and it's kind of served me well. But if you don't have a focus of what you want to accomplish with that, then you're just going to kind of go wherever the winds, wherever the waters take you, and you're just going to go there with no real plan.
So, and it's interesting, and we talk about this, especially when we're looking at the journey component and how we craft and write the narrative. Sometimes we don't want to look back. Sometimes individuals just don't want to take a look at their history or their family. They call it a family curse, but technically it's like family training almost, where they train you in a specific path. And again, some people will hear that voice, and I'll call it that. They hear the voice of, "Hey, it's time to wake up," and then they ignore it. So how did you not ignore the voice? How did you allow the conversation then to, wait a minute, I do need to make a path. I do need to rewrite some of the history that's going on.
Well, it just kind of scared me. Once
Mm.
I came to that realization, it was scary that, am I going to go down this same path as well? And, by that point, I had met some, people in my life that were, a little more uplifting, a little more positive, a little more fulfilling to me and kind of getting me in a different mindset. And, those kind of combinations, it gave me some empowerment to say, well, wait a minute, wait. I can't be held prisoner to my past. I can learn from it, but I just got to embrace the opportunities of, what this thing we call today has to offer,
Yeah,
because that's what it is. We can worry about tomorrow, but you know what? There's no guarantee we're going to get it tomorrow.
right.
And, identifying with your past, that's, if you've seen Napoleon Dynamite, I just kind of call it the Uncle Rico effect. That's what it is. We can't move past that.
Right.
And we miss everything that's in today, because that's where all the opportunities exist, is in today. And missing those opportunities, and it doesn't need to be something huge. It just, a lot of times, it's just the simple small things of the opportunities where we have to make a difference in the lives, not just in our lives, but in the lives of those that we impact in just whatever small way. And when we live for that, that's what's living for significance is all about.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity to leave our mark in this world. um, and we have to be intentional about it. What's the message you want to leave? Is it a message of, behold, this is who I was, or beware, this is who I was?
that's that's pretty powerful, just that whole concept. But when we're looking at that, okay, so in the loneliness and in that time growing up, there's that certain belief of, and I would, and I apologize, I kind of feel like I'm projecting on you, but you tell me if this
No.
is factual or not. But on the loneliness, we're actually looking internal. And now through the last couple of minutes of talking, it's almost like you're looking external. Is that so? If you were to sum it up, in this way, what would be that thought process, or the way that you looked at your life during that lonely time and during those things, and then again getting scared, just like you said, and then kind of shifting? So, kind of walk me through that component.
As far as the loneliness, you're right. You are really looking internal. You're really kind of, wondering, um, why can I not make relationships? Why can I not move past, this, the relationships that I kind of made in my teens. I mean, there were some, good friends, and I've stayed in contact with them, but we were also, again, like, I'll kind of go back. We were boys, and we did stupid boy things.
Right, right,
Um, we all do stupid boy things, and some of those were, I can look back on them now and I can laugh on them. But um, once I kind of moved past that, got kind of moved on from, being that 17-year-old and kind of still trying to maybe hang on to that, you realize that it's not going to work anymore. And so, the idea of loneliness, for me, was just hours just spent, not really focused on what it is I want to accomplish. Now, I'm all for solitude. Don't get me wrong. Solitude is fantastic. We need those moments of solitude. We need to just get off by ourselves. I mean, Jesus Christ got off by himself quite often because he needed time to refresh and recharge. But loneliness is something else. That's just that's where you're kind of getting into that dangerous space of, not really understanding who you are. You're not getting you're not fed in a way that takes you to the, takes you to that next level, or just kind of moves you in a direction that you want to go. You just kind of
Yeah.
maybe start accepting things. This is the way it's always going to be.
Mm.
And that's kind of what loneliness kind of did to me for a couple of years.
And that's dangerous too. Just to accept it the way it is,
Yeah.
and to just kind of
Yeah.
roll over. I mean, there's wow. All right. So as we kind of look at that, and I know that you're doing this now because obviously, like we mentioned at the beginning, you're really tied in with your kids' life and with your family's life, and then you also work
Mhm.
into the community. So maybe take us through some of that transition from going to that from that position of, like you said, not really wanting. I don't want to say passively accept whatever life was going to throw to you, to now becoming, I'll call
Yeah.
you a conqueror, because it's really like that's how you project, and that's where you're going, is like
Yeah.
how do you move from, if somebody's in that position, to now where you're at. And I know, and we'll probably talk about some of these things, what are the habits and the things that you're doing now, and what do you glory in?
Yeah. Kind of back up, you kind of, I did not grow up churched. Okay. I did not grow up churched at all. I mean, we weren't even what they call them, creasters, where you go to church at Christmas and Easter. We didn't even do that. Um, um, but it wasn't until I, late 20s, early 30s, where I kind of started, stepping into this, a little bit of faith. And when I met my wife, she was active in her church community.
Hmm.
And then we had our first child. And it's funny, my wife grew up Catholic. I didn't grow up in anything. But growing up Catholic is, I have family. I was people in my family that are Catholic, so I had a little bit of understanding what Catholicism is. But my wife was kind of, on that fence. So, want to continue in the Catholic Church, or what do I want to do? But her parents were adamant. You're going to get married in the Catholic Church. We're paying for the wedding. That's going to happen. I'm like, okay, fine. That's fine. I didn't have any leg to stand on with that. So we got married in the Catholic Church, and within a year we had our first child. And they're like, well, you're going to get this child baptized in the Catholic Church. I'm like, okay, I guess we're getting this child baptized in the Catholic Church. But in between our first child and our second child, that's when I really came to my faith. And we started attending a non-denominational congregation. And when the time when our second child was born, the expectation was you're going to get him baptized in the Catholic Church. And by that time I have had an understanding of what my faith was telling me, what the Bible said. I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. And I would I challenge them, just show me if you can show me in the Bible where it says that I need to do that, then gladly I'll do it. And of course, there's nothing in the Bible that says I need to do that. So it caused some friction. But in that time, I could share it. Today was my son's 27th birthday. So a couple years prior, we had started, like I said, we became, very faithful in this church, and our son was born. And within 6 weeks, we knew there was something that wasn't quite right. And we had to take him into the hospital, and found out he basically had no blood platelets. So it kind of just went down this long road of where we were at, to the point, um, in March. He was born in November. In March, he was basically given a 5% chance of survival. So at that point, you're like, okay, what's going on here? And it was those people we hadn't even met in this church yet, the ones who were reaching out to us. They were the ones that were showing us what this is all about. They were the ones that were there for us going through this. And that is what, changed everything for me. That's what changed my perspective on everything,
Hmm.
that of how I understood what the church was all about, what it meant to be a man and woman of God. And that was, to me, that was one of the turning points in my life, as far as how I was going to live my faith, how I was going to exercise who I was, and how I was going to identify myself with, how I wanted to go forward.
Isn't it interesting? And there's two things here that you said. That one, and this was early on there, is that when two narratives clash, there's always friction. And how
Yeah.
you were talking about the aspect of, well, you of course you're going to get them baptized, and of course you're going to live this way, and of course you're going to, and yet you were starting to craft your narrative, and there was friction there, and I'm sure there's probably a lot we could talk about on that aspect. But then the second
Yeah.
thing is that you kind of brought out is it's when you're in that community and you're feeling that loneliness, and somebody reaches out and somebody says, "Hey, I see you." Just that little bit can totally shift an entire projection or the trajectory of somebody's life. And I'll let you speak on either one, like whichever way you'd like to go. But there were two big things right there that I felt were really key in that whole transitional movement there.
Yeah. You talked about the friction, and I absolutely believe that, anything we do, we have to have that solid foundation of beliefs. We that because everything we do, every choice we make, every
Yep.
decision we make has to rest on that. And when it's solid, you're making the right choices, you're making the right decisions. And so you really need to evaluate what it is you believe. Do you believe, is this what you truly believe, or is this just something that's been passed down through your family history? And if that's the case, does it serve you? If it doesn't serve you, then you have to evaluate that. Because when you're not solid in your beliefs, your chances are you making the right choices and the right decisions are not good. But when I say you got to be solid in that, is this something you got to be so solid in that belief? Is this something that you are willing to charge up a hill and take your stand for? If it is, then you got to hang on to it. If not, then maybe really kind of evaluate that and inspect that, um, because that's important. Because those things, and you're right, it can cause friction when you're kind of going against maybe something that's gone down through your family history, your family lineage, that maybe you're kind of taking a different stand. And I mean, it's no secret that in this day and age, we're in a very polarized society, and you see families breaking up over just something as silly as a belief. They're not they're missing the main thing. And I say you got to keep the main thing the main thing. And if you're a family, well, the main thing is what's that relationship, and I get sometimes, things happen in families, and there's things that happen in my families that maybe it's not best to have that person as part of your life. But if they're in your family, you really need to maybe evaluate it and really kind of, challenge that friction and figure out where that friction's coming from. And it serves you well. I mean, it served me well to really uh, dig into those things that I know to be true in my life. And I
Yeah.
like to say I'm an expert. I'm an expert on me. So, and you're an expert on you. We all have expertise, and that expertise is in who we are. And when you are solid on that, then you are a solid expert on who you are.
Yeah, yeah, and I love, and it comes down to, and I think you were basically mentioning this. It comes down to why. Why do I believe this? And
Yeah.
questioning and saying, okay, I need to have a solid foundation in order to make solid decisions, and therefore I need to look at the beliefs that I've established and whether they're passed down or
Mhm.
society is telling us how wherever that's coming from is why. What
Yeah.
is that? And
Yeah. And to get to the second part of your question there, um, a lot of times the greatest thing we can do for us, the greatest gift we can give to somebody is just to listen.
mm,
Just to listen. That's empathy. We think we need to be sympathetic, but sympathy is really making it about yourself. Empathy is you're making this about the other person. You're getting in their shoes and you're feeling their pain. And as a man, that doesn't necessarily come natural to us. It's definitely more a feminine energy than a masculine energy. But through the years, I had to learn how to develop my empathy muscle, and it has served me well.
mm,
Really kind of trying to understand that, especially raising a daughter who was, needless to say, she was probably a lot like me and stubborn in a lot of her ways. But she still was still, she was still a female, and
right.
she just wanted her dad to listen and be empathetic. And kind of go back to the society we're in now, where we have fringes on either side that they believe that the one who yells the loudest is going to get their way.
Mm,
Eh, okay. all right, I don't believe that, but I think the ones who really listen, I don't have to believe, I don't have to um, necessarily 100% believe in what it is you believe in, but listening to it and giving it some validation, that's powerful. I'll validate that that's your belief. I'm not going to validate the crazy, but I will validate um, what it is you believe. And we can have different, political opinions or different
Oh,
opinions of how to
absolutely.
raise children, whatever. It doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but I can validate it. That's what you believe. And that's what empathy's about.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to empathy.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it was one of the things you said earlier is I'm an expert on me. I'm not necessarily an expert on you, but I'm an expert on me, right?
Right.
So it fits in perfectly.
We're
So
all
what are
experts. We're all experts.
exactly? So what are some things that you do on a daily basis to continue to craft your narrative and continue to walk in the path that you want to walk in?
Well, one of the things I do is I really just focus on what opportunities are there. I want to, before I go to bed each day, I really kind of look at, what my next day is going to hold. I look at where possible opportunities may lie. And when those opportunities happen, I embrace them in the best I can. So I think that's what's important. It's just living for the moment. I mean, you want to have a plan for, what your future holds. You want to have a direction, a focus. Uh, but once you got that in place, you got to execute it. And how you execute it is each day doing that. So, I mean, as far as what I do, I spend time in the morning journaling. I love to journal. I've journaled for years and years and years. I probably have journaled for 25 years. And much to my wife's chagrin, I have saved every one of those moleskins. And she's like, "Can we get rid of these?" I'm like, "Nope, you aren't touching those." And I've got them on the bookshelf. And periodically, I will pull them out and I've always do every time I journal something, I date it. I give it a specific date of what I wrote on that day. And I'll just kind of grab one and maybe once or twice a year and just kind of read. I don't know particular and I'll just kind of open it up and see where I was at on that date and what my thought process was and what my what I was talking about. And I started to notice just kind of a lot of symmetry. Those thoughts have always been there and they just kind of carried me forward. And it helps me to stay grounded on those things that I know to be true. It helps me to really bring into clarity as far as what I want to accomplish. And more importantly, I mean, I learned years ago that if you journaling, the great authors of our time, you know, they've all journaled, and that's how they've written their books. They just pick up their journals and like, all right, here's all the thoughts, here's all the ideas I've had, and they just kind of embellish them on there. And so that's what's important to me. And that's, the thoughts and ideas I have just didn't come to me in a moment. They've come through years and years and
Yeah.
years of crafting them and really honing them down and just trying to bring clarity to them.
I've talked about journaling a lot. I'm going to take a real quick rabbit trail and we'll get right back on track because I've talked about journaling a lot. I think this is important. The question that I always get asked is, Tim, you just don't understand. I am not a writer. I'm not a journaler. I'm not this or that or whatever. And I always hear that exact same thing. So I'm going to ask you two questions. One is if somebody came and said that to you, what would you say to them? And then the second question is, of all of the things that you've journaled, what would you say is the greatest benefit of those journals?
Okay. Someone comes to me and says, I'm not okay. Well, are you a thinker? And I think we're all thinkers. Just write down your thoughts. That's all journaling is. It's just writing down your thoughts, as you spend time reflecting. And that's kind of where I really get, I will spend some time, I'll read the Bible and I'll just kind of really reflect on it. And that's what a lot of my journaling is about. Those thoughts that just came to me.
I love
It
that.
may be related to that, or it just may be related to something else. But that's all journaling is: the thoughts you have, writing them down, because we all get these thoughts, and I'm guilty of this too. We all get these thoughts, and you're like, you don't have something to write it down. Then like an hour later, wait, that was a great thought. I know what exactly did I say?
What
What did I
was
say? Yeah. What was it? What was it? So
it?
I learned that just carry something with you.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't, just write it down. I did maybe just give myself a couple of words to or a couple bullet points to just really get the brain synapses firing again about what it is that I said. So that's all journaling is. It's just your
Yeah.
thoughts. And um,
So the greatest
what's
benefit,
important for it to me. I'm sorry.
the greatest benefit. What's the greatest benefit? Why?
Greatest benefit is, yeah, the greatest benefit for me is that it's just really helped me build that foundation for my life. It's really helped me to understand who I am and whose I am. Because as I get those messages, I get those thoughts, and you write them down, and there's clarity on that. And I've had the opportunity to lead different groups, lead different men, women, however. And part of being a leader is you've got to have a foundation. You've got to have that vision. And
Mm,
that's what it's helped me to do, is to create that vision, because that's what leadership is. You're
mm,
creating a vision and you're casting it out there. And you need to have, you got to, that vision you create brings in your tribe, whatever you want to call it, for you to lead. Because if you don't have that vision and you say you're a leader and nobody's following you, you're just kind of out for a Sunday stroll at that point.
exactly.
And so that's what I really have got now. It's just
Yeah.
that vision that I have for the life I want to live, the life I want to lead. And if others want to come along with me, fantastic. I'll take them on that journey.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So, all right. Well, we're winding down as far as our time. But what would be one thing somebody walks away from listening to this? What would be that one thing that you want them to walk away with? The one thing that you want them to remember?
We all have an opportunity to do something with our lives. We all um, what a lot of people do. And I'm going to go back to the movie Shawshank Redemption. This is where I've gotten a lot of this from. I think there's two primary people in the world. If you've ever have you seen the movie Shawshank
Oh yeah.
Redemption?
Yep. Yep. Go ahead. I know where you're
Okay,
going. I love it.
so there's two primary people in the world. Okay, and the first person is that one who it just builds up these walls around their life, and um, they become so comfortable behind those walls that to break down those walls is just terrifying. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I can't get beyond this. And they do nothing. They're more comfortable behind these walls, even though they're miserable.
Mm,
Brooks, he's the classic example in the movie Shawshank Redemption. He lived the majority of his life in prison. He got to go free. He didn't know what to do. He just panicked. And he panicked by hanging himself in his room. And the other type is red. Okay, he's behind these walls, but he knows he wants something else. He knows he wants something more out of his life. And once those walls come down for him, yeah, he's a little lost. He's trying to figure it out, but a guide comes along and shows him the way. And that's what a lot of people want. They just want somebody to show them the way. You need to take the action. I'll show you the way. I can't take the action for you.
yeah.
And that's what people need to understand. The action is on you. What do you want out of your life? What do you want to be? What is it you want to become? Just take the action. Too many people will spend years and years and years saying, if only, I need the perfect time to act. And they'll say that. They'll come up with a litany of excuses. I need the kids out of the house, or I need X number of dollars, whatever it may be. And they sit there and finally one day they wake up and they ask, well, what happened? They let life happen to them instead of them being intentional and them happening to life. And
Mm,
that's what it's about. You got to happen to life. You got to be intentional in your actions. If you want to go do something, if you want to go to the next level, if you want to be that person of integrity or whatever it is you want to be, it's on you. You have to be the one that takes action.
mm,
And that's what I want people to carry away. You have to be an action taker.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that aspect, and it's so true. I mean, you can the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You've got to take the action for
Right.
yourself. You absolutely have to.
Yeah.
So, how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to find you, especially if what you've said is resonating with somebody? How can they get in contact with you?
Okay. Well, I have a website. It's Rob Fenstermaker, ROBFENSTERMAKER.com.
Well,
You can also reach me email at
spell that
Rob.
again because that was quick. Yeah, you got to spell that
Spell
again.
again. I know. I said it quick. It's Rob Fenstermaker. It's all one word. ROBFENSTERMAKER.com. Or you can just reach out to me via email at rob@robfenstermaker.com. Pretty much all over social media. Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram. So I'm the same, just Rob Fenstermaker. Just look me up that way. I'd
Love
love
that.
to have a conversation with you, and
Yeah.
just feel free to reach out.
Yep, absolutely. And I say this every time, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. And again, all the guests that we have, all the people that are telling their stories, the reason why they can tell the story the way that they can is because they've been through it. And knowing that you're not alone gives the power to be able to say, yeah, you can reach out. And so, again, from the bottom of my heart, and I know from the bottom of Rob's heart, if something that was said, something we talked about resonated with you, something changed your life, something was just like, man, that was powerful, we want to hear about it. We really, truly want to hear, even if it's just a simple email like, hey, thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing the story. We want to hear about it. And again, reach out directly to Rob. I'm totally fine with that. If that's where you want to go, that's awesome. If you want to reach out to me, we definitely share those stories out all the time. Other than that, we're obviously, if you're listening to this on a podcast, we're on YouTube, so you got to hit the subscribe buttons. Love to be able to share with you again. Rob, I can't thank you enough. I really, really appreciate you sharing the authentic part of your story and the emotion that comes out. I just really, really appreciate that.
I appreciate it, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity as well.
So until the next story comes out, until the next narrative that we have, again, everybody keep writing your narrative, keep crafting that journey, because only you, just like Rob said, only you can take the action to make it happen.
Yes, sir.